Redfoot, Bluefoot, Greenfoot, more, read across America is what's in store. Education Today starts now.
We looked, then we saw him step in on the mat. We looked and we saw him, the cat in the hat. Oh, hello. Welcome to Education Today. I'm John Zish with the Armstrong School District. You know, March 2nd is Read Across America Week. This was originally created as a one-day event to celebrate the joy of reading on March 2nd, the birthday of beloved Dr. Seuss. Read Across America has grown into a nationwide initiative that promotes reading every day of the year. It's Seuss-sational. Today, we're actually going to travel inside books on a journey with reading teacher Terry Atarian from East Franklin Elementary School and Ann Miranda, who is principal of East Franklin and North Buffalo Elementary Schools. On behalf of the school district and administration, welcome to Education Today.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Hi, Jonathan.
Now I'm going to take this hat off briefly, and I was wondering if you'd please tell us briefly about yourselves.
Okay. I'm Terry Atarian, and I'm the Title I reading teacher at East Franklin Elementary, and I basically work with all the first grade students in first grade and help them with some reading strategies and helping to make reading more exciting and fun for them.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
How about you, Ann?
Hi, I'm Ann Miranda, and I'm the principal at North Buffalo and East Franklin Elementary Schools. And I have the pleasure of having wonderful teachers like Mrs. Yetarian, who work very well with our students and invite them to reading and provide that adventure for them.
Very nice. Well, I see that you've brought some books with you today. Mrs. Yetarian, I'd like to start with you. What is your book, and would you mind reading it for us?
Oh, I sure would. I'd love to read it. I brought the book The Napping House with me today, and it was written by Audrey Wood and illustrated by Dawn Wood. The book was actually written in 1984, and I brought it with me because it was one of my childhood favorites.
Oh, wonderful.
My grandmother used to watch me when I was younger, whenever my mom and dad were at work, and she used to read this story to me every day before I went to sleep, after The Price is Right was over, as a matter of fact. I remember it was time for the nap, so we always read The Napping House. So, and I like the repetitiveness of the story.
Sure.
And my son, who's 2, also really enjoys this story now as well. So I'm going to read The Napping House.
Thank you.
There is a house, a napping house, where everyone is sleeping. And in that house there is a bed, a cozy bed in a napping house where everyone is sleeping. And on that bed there is a granny, a snoring granny, on a cozy bed in a napping house where everyone is sleeping. And on that granny there is a child, a dreaming child, on a snoring granny on a cozy bed in a napping house where everyone is sleeping. And on that child there is a dog, a dozing dog on a dreaming child, on a snoring granny on a cozy bed in a napping house where everyone is sleeping. And on that dog there is a cat, a snoozing cat, on a dozing dog, on a dreaming child, on a snoring granny, on a cozy bed in a napping house where everyone is sleeping. And on that cat there is a mouse, a slumbering mouse, on a snoozing cat, on a dozing dog, on a dreaming child, on a snoring granny, on a cozy bed in a napping house where everyone is sleeping. And on that mouse there is a flea. Can it be? A wakeful flea, on a slumbering mouse, on a snoozing cat, on a dozing dog, on a dreaming child, on a snoring granny, on a cozy bed in a napping house where everyone is sleeping. A wakeful flea who bites the mouse, Who scares the cat? Who claws the dog? Who thumps the child? Who bumps the granny? Who breaks the bed? In the napping house, where no one now is sleeping.
Oh, that's very nice. What a fun book that is. I can see why that was probably your favorite as a child growing up.
Yes.
And even today, and even of your children.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that excellent selection. I noticed a lot of books these days have that repetition. Do you have any ideas on why that's used so much? I have a lot of books for my son, in fact, both of my sons that use that. But
It's really good for beginning readers.
Ah.
A lot of times children, as they grow to like a book, they tend to memorize it. So as we're trying to get them introduced more into looking at print and associating print with the words, it's good for repetition so that they have that in their mind more, and then they're able to eventually start putting that with the print, and it helps them in becoming beginning readers.
very nice. Mrs. Miranda, I see you've also brought a book. Would you please share that book with us?
Yes, I'd like to share this book. I brought this because it was a book that I really enjoyed as a young child, and it's in contrast, of course, with Tara's book that was first published in 1984, did you say? Okay, this one was first published in 1941, so even the cover is somewhat different, and as you can see right here, there's a big gold seal on it. That means it won a Caldecott Award when it was published at that time. It was written by Robert McCloskey, and he wrote a lot of children's books. And in fact, it takes place in Boston, and if you go to Boston today, there are statues related to this book in the park that you would see. So it's a book that opened my eyes. I was from Buffalo, New York. It made me really want to travel and see what Boston was like when I was a child. And this book lacks the repetitive verse, which is kind of a change from what we would see in time, because of the fact that it basically dwells on the story, and it was probably a book that was read a lot by parents to their children. And it starts out like this. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were looking for a place to live, but every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a nice place, Mrs. Mallard said it was no good. There were sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise a family where there might be foxes or turtles, so they flew on. When they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard, so down they flapped. Next morning, they fished for the breakfast in the mud at the bottom of the pond. But they didn't find much. Just as they were getting ready to start on their way, a strange, enormous bird came by. It was pushing a boat full of people, and there was a man sitting on its back. Good morning, quacked Mr. Mallard, being polite. The big bird was too proud to answer. But the people on the boat threw peanuts into the water, so the Mallards followed them all around the pond and got another breakfast, better than the first. I like this place, said Mrs. Mallard, as they climbed down on the bank and waddled along. Why don't we build a nest and raise our ducklings right in this pond? There are no foxes and no turtles, and the people feed us peanuts. What could be better? Good, said Mr. Mallard, delighted that at last Mrs. Mallard had found a place that suited her. But look out, squawked Mrs. Mallard, all of a dither. You'll get run over. And when she got her breath, she added, this is no place for babies. With all those horrid things rushing about, we'll have to look somewhere else. So they flew over Beacon Hill and round the State House, but there was no place there. They looked in Lewisburg Square, but there was no water to swim in. Then they flew over the Charles River. This is better, quacked Mr. Mallard. That island looks like a nice quiet place, and it's only a little way from the public garden. Yes, said Mrs. Mallard, remembering the peanuts. That looks like just the right place to hatch the ducklings. So they chose a cozy spot among the bushes near the water and settled down to build their nest. And only just in time, for now they were beginning to molt. All their old wing feathers started to drop out, and they would not be able to fly again until the new ones grew in. but of course they could swim. And one day they swam over to the park on the riverbank, and there they met a policeman called Michael. Michael fed them peanuts, and after that the mallards called on Michael every day. After Mrs. Mallard had laid 8 eggs in the nest, she couldn't go to visit Michael anymore because she had to sit on the eggs to keep them warm. She moved off the nest only to get a drink of water or to have her lunch, or to count the eggs and make sure they were all there. One day, the ducklings hatched out. First came Jack, then Cack, and then Lack, and then Mack, and Knack, and a Whack, and Pack, and Quack. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were bursting with pride. It was a great responsibility taking care of so many ducklings, and it kept them very busy. One day, Mr. Mallard decided he'd like to take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like further on. So off he set. "I'll meet you in a week in the public garden," he quacked over his shoulder. "Take good care of the ducklings." "Don't you worry," said Mrs. Mallard. "I know all about bringing up children." And she did. She taught them how to swim and dive. She taught them to walk in a line and to come when they were called and to keep a safe distance from bikes and scooters and other things with wheels. When at last she felt perfectly satisfied with them, she said one morning, "Come along, children, follow me." Before you could wink an eyelash, Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, a Whack, Pack, and Quack fell into line, just as they had been taught. Mrs. Mallard led the way into the water, and they swam behind her to the opposite bank. There they waded ashore and waddled along till they came to the highway. Mrs. Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Honk, honk went the horns on the speeding cars. Quack went Mrs. Mallard as she tumbled back again. Quack, 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 quack went Jack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Quack, a Whack, Pack, and Quack, just as loud as their little quackers could quack. The cars kept speeding by and honking, and Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings kept right on quack, quack, quacking. They made such a noise that Michael came running, waving his arms and blowing his whistle. He planted himself in the center of the road, raised one hand to stop the traffic, and then beckoned with the other, the way policemen do, for Mrs. Mallard to cross over. As soon as Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings were safe on the other side and on their way down Mount Vernon Street, Michael rushed back to his police booth. He called Clancy at headquarters and said, "There's a family of ducks walking down the street." Clancy said, "Family of what?" "Ducks," yelled Michael. "Send a police car quick." Meanwhile, Mrs. Mallard had reached the corner bookshop and turned into Charles Street with Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, a Whack, Pack, and Quack, all marching in line right behind her. Everyone stared. An old lady from Beacon Hill said, "Isn't it amazing?" And the man who swept the street said, "Well, now, ain't that nice?" And when Mrs. Mallard heard them, she was so proud she tipped her nose in the air and walked along with an extra swing in her waddle. When they came to the corner of Beacon Street, there was the police car with 4 policemen that Clancy had sent from headquarters. The policemen held back the traffic so Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings could march across the street, right on into the public garden. Inside the gate, they all turned around to say thank you to the policemen. The policemen smiled and waved goodbye. When they reached the pond and swam across to the little island, there was Mr. Mallard waiting for them, just as he had promised. The ducklings liked the new island so much that they decided to live there. All day long, they follow the swan boats and eat peanuts. And when night falls, they swim to their little island and they go to sleep.
Wonderful, Anne. Thanks for sharing that book, and I like the bedtime theme at the end to help get the young ones to sleep.
You can see why I probably liked it as a child and maybe want to travel. All that about Boston was
Definitely.
really sounded very exciting.
Yeah, you know, my dad read that to me when I was little too, and I remember it forming those same kind of impressions in my mind about Boston. And now I've picked it up again for my sons, and just with that greater appreciation. So very nice.
Yeah, actually the whole notion of family in this book is so strong. You know, with the ducklings, but it's the idea of family, the mom and dad taking care of one another and the children.
That's important. We're going to take a brief break from Armstrong School District's education today. Please hang on 1 minute, and we will be right back to learn more about Read Across America.
Hello, I'm Bill Kerr, Superintendent of Schools for the Armstrong School District. The theme for American Education Week, A Strong America begins with great public schools, continues throughout this school year. I see public education as a great investment, an investment in quality educational programs and services that continues to yield countless benefits to strengthen our schools and communities. We're proud that our students did a commendable job on the 2005 state math and reading assessments. Their work, along with those of their teachers, enabled all schools in the Armstrong School District to make adequate yearly progress under the federal No Child Left Behind Act. Congratulations to all involved.
And we're back with Armstrong School District's Education Today. It's Read Across America Week, and we're talking about the joy of reading. We encourage you all to read as well. Our guests are Mrs. Ann Miranda from East Franklin and North Buffalo Elementary Schools and Terry Atarian from East Franklin Elementary School. And I was wondering, Mrs. Miranda, if you would start us off in the second half. Would you please tell us a little bit about parent involvement and why that's so important in reading?
Oh, it's key to helping the children along. Children love their parents so much that anything that they do becomes top priority for the child. They want to be successful in what the parent thinks is important. If they see their mom and dad reading, especially dads, because of the fact that sometimes reading tends to be something that's a little more connected with femininity, I don't know why, but maybe it was mom generally would read the story before bed or something. But if they see dad doing that with them, it's so impressionable. It creates such a good, meaningful experience for children. So that's just, it's very important to lead by example in that way.
Really stands out.
I know Mrs. Yetarian has some things that that she's done with parent involvement that are really standout things that really help parents too.
Sure. Tara, if you wouldn't mind talking about that.
At East Franklin Elementary, for example, we really promote children reading every night, and we like them to read. I mean, they read a lot every day at school as well, but we like them to carry that over at home, and it's important that the parents are supportive of that. We have the students actually reading books that are on their independent levels, so they can go home and read them comfortably with a parent. So it doesn't put a lot of stress and pressure on the parent, as they're not their reading instructor. They're just a supporter. They're just an ear there to listen to the child and make them feel successful at reading. Some ideas of some things that some parents might want to do with their children to help them get excited about reading and foster the joy of reading in their children is, for example, simple things like reading the mail. Let your children going through the envelopes and the mail to help you determine what's useful and what's not useful and help you make piles. Browse together through catalogs or magazines.
That's a good idea.
Look for print in there. Send birthday and other special occasion cards to people, have them help you pick those out and help them, look at the letters and make the sounds on those. Of course, having your child tell a story, like if you're telling a bedtime story or something, that's wonderful. But if parents can even incorporate that in with writing, that shows the children that writing is important as well as reading, because the two go together. They always say that good readers are good writers and good writers are good readers. So you could have your children tell them a bedtime story, and then even if the child could see the parent writing it down, and then they would have it to go back to and kind of like making their own book. So they would have it then to go back and read themselves.
That could be a real bonding experience between parent and child, I see.
Yeah, it could. And then also, I know in the car or whenever parents take their children out to the store or anywhere, I really like them to promote the environmental print. So all the signs and things that they see on the storefronts, if they can point out that's a W in Walmart, that makes the wuss sound, and then the children can see that there's a reason why we're trying to learn how to read at school. It's because we use it in our everyday environment. Also playing rhyme games, singing little songs that have rhymes in them, just so students learn and kids learn nursery rhymes. That's important as well. And same thing with writing shopping lists, having your children help you with all those day-to-day activities that you do at home and maybe take for granted. If they see you point that out to them and show them the connection between real life and learning to read, so that they can make it meaningful and enjoy it more.
Very nice suggestions, Tara. Hope you were all paying attention. Try those out at home if you get a chance. They sound like they would work wonders in starting that joy of reading.
For you too, with your little one.
Well, definitely.
Right?
I think I got a few suggestions of my own that I'm going to use, especially the one where you have the child write their own story verbally, and then the parent sort of records it.
Yes.
Oh, that's a nice idea, yeah. Well, We've kind of touched on this, but I'd like to ask both of you, in your experiences, what works to get kids excited about reading, and what have you seen along those lines?
Well, when you talk regarding parent involvement, the parents, very important. Also that I think when they come to school, when the children come to school and they are with children their own age, with their peers, and they realize the need to be able to read and write to communicate. It becomes very important. Even something, well, we have something like Valentine's Day, where they're reading their little notes back and forth, or messages back and forth, and the ability to do that, to communicate with another human being. Because the bottom line is that we really want that communication with other people, and we get that through our speaking and our writing skills and the ability to read the print. So it's a very important part of life and being social.
That's a good point. Do you have anything to add to that?
Just a little bit. And I find too that the more choice that you give the students in their reading, the more exciting it becomes to them. Even just the way that you display a book for the kids, if you sit them up like they would appear in a bookstore or something, and make it just a little bit more appealing to them. How you have their reading area set up like a comfortable place to sit, and even the lighting, and give them that choice of what kind of books they want to pick to read, and the time to do that. That's what I find helps get them excited.
Very nice. Well, now that it's Read Across America Week, I was wondering if you'd please tell us at each of your schools what's going on. And let's start with you, Ann, at North Buffalo.
Well, at North Buffalo, we do some things with the titles with the books, and play games with them, and then also encourage reading. We have one of the teachers that does a read 100 book kind of thing, so those are the ones that are displayed on the bulletin boards and in the hallways. I know that Mrs. Utarian has some things to say about what we're going to do at East Franklin.
Oh, sure.
At East Franklin every year, our PTO actually plan a nice little, it's not a breakfast, but it sounds like a breakfast menu when I get into it in a minute. But they actually do it in the afternoon for the kids, and we kind of rotate all the rooms in and out, and we let the kids have green eggs and ham. So they read the story and they make the green eggs with the green food coloring and the ham, and the kids are like, ooh, when they come in to see it, but they love it, and we give them, a little drink. So that's like the big thing that we have been doing. However, this year, the teachers have kind of gotten together, and we've decided to try something a little different as well. It's going to kind of work like a rotation station, where all of the teachers are going to get together and plan. So they'll each choose a different Dr. Seuss book, and then they'll plan a little, probably maybe like a 20 to 30 minute lesson on that book. Fun things, like if they're reading the book about Oobleck, then they might do that activity where they would make the green stuff with the kids and let them play with that. That way all the students will get to rotate into each of the rooms. They'll have an experience with about 7 or 8 of the different Dr. Seuss stories and have a more in-depth hands-on experience with it.
That's right.
So it'll be a little bit more exciting for the kids this year.
Sounds like a good program.
Looking forward to it.
Yes,
And in
we
case
are
you
looking
missed
forward
it,
to
Oobleck, a Dr. Seuss term, right?
Yes, it is.
It's something like a, what is it, an animal?
It's
of
like a
some kind?
green goo.
Oh, it's a goo. Okay, I was way off.
I think so. I think it's that stuff that kind of comes together, and then it's real runny, and you can make it.
And of course, all the schools across the district are doing something for Read Across America
yes,
Day.
it's a very exciting time for us. We
And I
really make a big deal out of it.
And I know our superintendent, Dr. Kerr, is always excited about visiting the schools and reading to the kids. And a lot of our staff, administrators, community members like to come in, read
Yes,
books.
we all have the hats.
That's excellent.
Yes.
Well, I was wondering if we could move on, Ann, a little bit to your program, which I think is innovative, called Read to the Principal, which happens all year round. It's not just on Read Across America Week. Read to the Principal. Would you please tell me what Read to the Principal is and what it's all about?
Well, Read to the Principal is just a way for me as the principal to kind of check the kids on their reading, get to know the kids, and have a real nice one-on-one kind of situation with them, a small group anyway. What the children do is with their parent, with their teacher, they select a book, and I get to hear each child read to me once during the school year for sure in the Read to the Principal program. I have a group of 4 or 5 children, and I'm thinking of East Franklin in particular, because first grade, they really love it. Although my students at North Buffalo are very much receptive too to coming in and just reading. They choose something that maybe a poem or a little short part of a book, and they read to me for less than a minute, and there are 4 or 5 other children listening. They're given little cues about what they're to read. At the end of their reading, everyone applauds for each other, and then they pick the next reader. And then they make a little smiley face, or they put a face on a star. We go out to the bulletin board, hang that up. They get a pencil that says, I read to the principal. And we just celebrate the fact that they're reading and we've shared something together. It's a very pleasant thing for me. I really enjoy it.
It's a nice initiative, that's for sure. At East Franklin and North Buffalo
Both
Elementary
schools, yes.
Wonderful. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I'd like to thank both of you for being on the show, Mrs. Miranda, Mrs. Utarian. Thanks for sharing some of your experiences and advice on how to promote reading to everyone. And we hope that you all pick up books too at home.
And thanks so much for asking us.
Definitely.
Yes, thank you.
And I would also like to thank our outstanding film crew from Ford City High School who've taped today's show. Thanks for taking care of us. We would like to encourage everyone and every parent and child to enjoy a book today and every day. Now humor me for just a moment. To close, I'll thank our Ford City High film crew. Now if you'll excuse me, I have some more reading to do. Take care, everyone.
Planning on taking the SAT? Armstrong School District is offering an SAT prep course to 9th, 10th, and 11th graders students. The session will concentrate on verbal, math, and writing review. The cost of the classes and textbook is $50. The deadline is February 24th, 2006. The 4 Saturday classes will take place from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. March 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th in the Ford City High School Library. 100 4th Avenue, Ford City. To register, send your name, address, and a $50 check payable to Armstrong School District to Mrs. Rosemary Balasek, West Shamokin Junior Senior High School, 178 Wolf Drive, Rural Valley, PA 16249. For more information, please call 724-783-7040. Well, that's all for now. I'm Julie Katchuk from Ford City Senior High School, and keep watching.